Pro-democracy advocates in Hong Kong haven't given up, while more Chinese officials slated for anti-graft probes prefer suicide over the death penalty. Plus, today is the last day to join China's AIIB. All these stories coming up next. This is the Asia Brief. A very good Tuesday morning to you. My name, of course, is Steve Miller, your host, and it is my pleasure to have you here with me on this March 31st of 2015. Now, last year, the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong captivated the world. And really, why not? We're talking students taking to the streets for 2 months to pursue universal suffrage. Now, as admirable as that is, I do think that plan was somewhat foolish. And the reason why is I don't think it was carefully thought through to its fruition, that it was poorly planned. As I mentioned several times, Beijing could simply wait things out, and that's ultimately what they did. And unfortunately, nothing actually came about from their movement. There simply wasn't any endgame plan on behalf of the students. They simply demanded Beijing give them universal suffrage, and that just simply wasn't going to take place. On this past Monday, activists printed a full-page petition in a Chinese-language daily, warning of growing threats to academic freedom and the educational system. In fact, they were fearing a Chinese clampdown. The petition cited personal attacks on prominent academics in the pro-Beijing media, public criticism of individuals, student bodies, and academics by senior government officials, interference in the choice of teaching materials, and growing perceptions of political bias and improper influence in the appointment of university officers and members of governing bodies. At least 500 signed one of these petitions that was published in another paper. Now, Hong Kong human rights lawyer Michael Vidler made an interesting point. He said it was very important for people to actually sign their names to this issue and have it printed. And I believe he's absolutely right. On an issue as important as this, and really for any important issue, if you're unwilling to make your stance public, then how truly serious are you about it? I don't think so. Now, people can debate the methodology of the upcoming 2017 election for all they want to. Is Hong Kong truly going to be given the right to vote? Some say yes if you're on the pro-Beijing side. Some will say no if you're on the pro-democracy side. But in this particular issue, when the government starts getting involved in how universities are run, aside from just academic accreditation, when you start messing with the actual curriculum to fit their needs, to fit a political agenda over academics, then it becomes an assault on knowledge. It becomes an assault on freedom. When a government begins attacking free thought, then you know how far it's willing to go. And that is a very scary thought for Hong Kong. Over the past year, I've mentioned this several times, Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a hunt to rid the government of corruption, to rid the government of really anyone who goes against his vision for China. Now, according to the Want Daily, a growing number of public officials are committing suicide soon after being placed under investigation for graft. Now, 7 officials committed suicide in 2013, and that number jumped to 39 in 2014 as investigations intensified. And of those 39 who committed suicide last year, about a quarter of those were indicted or under investigation. Now, we all know the Chinese legal system is far from ideal. It's not even very transparent. But the issued death penalties for convictions of graft are actually on the decrease, thanks largely in part to a tiered system of punishment. Capital punishment is only being issued in cases where more than 100,000 yuan, or about $16,000 US, is ill-gotten. But even then, in most cases, the death penalty is then commuted after 2 years to a life sentence. Now, what's really interesting in this particular issue is the public reaction, because they actually support the suicides. They actually see it as a natural form of justice that the legal system in China can't pervert. They just simply don't have that great of trust for the legal system. But I'm not so sure I would call it justice. Because what does it say about a society that actually drives someone to commit suicide rather than face the legal system? In my opinion, that's a sign of a larger issue. Well, here we are, my friends, on March 31st, the final day of the month, and also the last day nations can sign up for that coveted founding member status in China's Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. Now, this, of course, is a $10 billion investment development bank aimed to rival the U.S.-led World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and of course, the Asia Development Bank. It's also being seen as a challenge to the United States' global decision-making power following World War II, as well as the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So far, over 30 countries have signed up for this founding member status, despite the United States voicing strong reservations that China is going to have a 50% stake in the bank's founding. In fact, once the United Kingdom signed up earlier this month, a flurry of other European nations and quote-unquote Western countries jumped on board. Now, in addition to China, Hong Kong has also signed on to be a founding member of the AIIB. Taiwan has signaled some interest in joining the AIIB, but nothing I would call gushing. Given the tumultuous relationship with cross-strait business dealings last year, I'm not so sure Taipei will pull the trigger today, but it will be interesting to watch. Well, my friends, those are the stories today. If you have a thought, please leave them in the comments on Facebook or Twitter. You'll be able to keep up with more news from the region by following Asian News Weekly on Facebook or Twitter. You can also send an email to the show with your questions, your comments, and your feedback. Just drop a note to podcast@asiannewsweekly.net. If you enjoyed today's program, please share it with your friends, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. It's easy to do and absolutely free. Just go to asiannewsweekly.net and click on the subscribe tab, or do it in your favorite podcast application like iTunes, Stitcher, or TuneIn Radio. Well, my friends, that is it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. My name, of course, is Steve Miller, and until next time, remember to be true to yourself and to always be awesome.